Hey, Mike. How's it going, man?
Good, Frank.
Yeah.
How are we doing this week?
We're doing fabulous, man.
Good.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Perspective Shift Studios.
Yeah, Perspective Shift Studios.
Like it.
Here we are now. Yeah. So what was your week like?
Great week. Yep. Busy. Love that we're getting into this beautiful weather. Arizona is now back to the perfect place to live.
Yeah, this is like our spring.
Yeah.
Yeah, the summer is, although it doesn't bother me, because I always shift my perspective.
It's the only way to get
As
through
best
it
I
in
can.
Arizona summer.
Yeah, but yeah, I actually enjoy the heat. But I also enjoy this time of year, too. When you wake up, it's a little bit chillier.
Yep.
But yet it's still maintaining pool weather. If you will.
No, first time I grabbed a jacket for my walk this morning
You
in
grabbed
a long
a
time.
jacket?
Well, I didn't take a jacket. Well, like
There's
a little hoodie.
Yeah, there's somebody in
It was
Wisconsin
70
cursing you
it
out
was
right now.
68, 70 degrees or
Yeah.
something. I remember being like,
Yeah,
I'm going to
jacket, yeah.
take a little something.
Just in case it
Kinda
get a
early.
snow flurry.
No, man. Anything under 70 is cold to
Yeah,
me.
that crazy?
Yeah.
Actually, I love this time of year because you got to wait a little while, probably like another couple of months, but I love to do cold dunks in the morning.
Oh, yeah. I remember you doing
And
this
you
last year.
Yeah, you can't. Because I've been doing it for several years now, but you can't do it in the summertime. It's ridiculous, you know. You could barely get a cold shower here. But yeah, when the water gets nice and cold, I wake up about 5 o'clock or 4:30. By 5 o'clock, I'm in that water.
I don't know how you do that.
Either do I. It's funny because I get up and I don't think. I just get up, I brush my teeth, and before I even meditate, I go out to the pool. And as I'm walking out there, the conversation in my head is like, "What are you doing? What are you nuts? What are you doing?"
Yep.
And then once I jump in, it's just like now I know why I do it. And again, it's just an experience. You know, there's
Like
no.
anything.
Yeah, because you can do studies on this and you can find the evidence you want, and it's okay with it. I just like the experience of it. So it doesn't mean you have to do it. Like we don't have to do anything, but I do like the experience of it. So
That's awesome.
I enjoy that. Yeah. So it's coming up.
What are we diving into this week?
Well, let's talk about. We had a caller named Brian.
Oh, yeah. So we had somebody write us a comment, Brian.
Yeah.
And he reached out. He asked about sickness and death.
Yeah.
Is what he wanted us to kind of chat about. So I thought that would be a cool. Let me make sure that's what he was talking about.
Yeah.
But he wrote in, "Hey guys, if you can you discuss sickness and death in an episode?" So let's dive into sickness and
It's
death.
going to be a sick, deadly episode.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
You want to kick us off?
Yeah, let's kick it off. All
What are you
right. So,
thinking?
first, the basis of what we come to understand is one of the principles that me and Mike talk about is we come to understand that life is eternal. All right. But the physical world in which we come here and the attribute of my corporeal body, it is finite. So there's infinite and finite at the same time, just like there's limitations, but within the field of limitations is where all the infinite possibilities come. So when you kind of grab onto that, now if the guy Brian's listening out there and hears this, hopefully by the end of this segment you'll have an understanding. So at some point in life, we know we're all going to die from this corporeal setting. All right? So death unto itself is something that we already agreed upon. All right? We actually die billions of times per second. That's another deeper understanding of it, but I even talked about this in other previous podcasts that there's no way to really fully explain it now or prove it now. I think one day science is getting really close to it. There's a lot more near-death experience that explain this type of death where someone's like, yeah, the person did flatline, but they came back. So they were able to come back, so they died but came back. But there's another way of looking at it, and I used this analogy before, but I once had an 18-year-old body, and that 18-year-old body is no longer on this planet. There was something in that 18-year-old body that's now in this body. It's the observer. That is the eternal aspect of us. So that body that was 18-year-old gave birth to new cells, which then left the old body, so it was replication. It wasn't until I looked at a photograph or a thought back of the time when I was 18 that I come to realize that body's no longer here. All right? So death is something that we've experienced multitudes of times. We're just not aware of it. Now, you could be aware, like I remember when my son was really young, I remember one day sending him to his room when he was like 2 years old. And he came out, and I was like...
You're a hardcore father at 2, Frank?
Yeah.
Get in your room.
Yeah.
At 2, are you even aware?
No.
You mean like 5, 6?
No, when my son was 2.
2? That seems so young.
What do you mean?
That seems so young.
No, but I'm saying when he went to bed at 2.
Oh, I thought you were saying go to your room at 2, and I'm like, man.
No.
I'm like,
No.
you're a hard,
Damn it.
hard-ass father.
Now mow the lawn, son of a bitch.
At 2,
No.
2 years old.
No, I put him in bed, and then the next morning when he woke up, he was no longer that toddler or that young child. Something happened. Now, it's very difficult, and all parents will go through this. Did he change that much overnight, or was my awareness or perception? He's no longer the 15-month-old. He's now 2 years old. Is a major change in his shift. So you start to experience that, but my son didn't know what I was talking about. So that's when the point in life when you head him over to the door jamb, and you take the pencil out or the pen, and you mark their head, and you start that journey of watching them grow. So every time they grow, the body they grew into, the body that was there, they left. Now, we don't see it that way, but that's really what happens. So when you start to place that concept of death into your head, it's not a defeatism thing. It's a natural causation of life.
On that same note, let's talk about what doesn't leave the body. So like
the witnesser.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like what Frank is talking about right here, he remembers his 18-year-old self. He remembers his 15-year-old self. He remembers his 25, his 45. We all remember these periods or stages in a linear concept of life.
And when I go into deep meditation, I also know previous lives and I know future lives. It's tough to explain, but anyone that meditates, this is why we do it. These concepts, and I don't know if they're just concepts or whatever entities talking to me, or is it my future self? Is it my past self? I don't know. I can't really prove it. But when I go into that deep meditation, that's what happens.
And each of these points of view, whatever you'd like to call them, perceptions, there's one constant, and that only constant is the awareness. That does not die. And so when Frank's talking about, looking back, at different periods in life or these different moments of, us growing, evolving, whatever, dying literally each moment, the one constant is the awareness. And right now, when you're at home, you're here, you exist. That's what we're talking about. It's a silence. It's not a thing. It's not tangible. You're just aware. And that has never left your body since birth, since you were 5, since you were 15.
Yeah.
You remember being aware. And that never leaves. That does not die.
No. And that's the experience everyone could have. We focus on that. But typically when we're talking about death, everyone is, they're talking about their own through other people. And what I mean is you can experience what we call sadness from somebody else's death, but you won't experience it from yours because you won't be aware of it. Just like my son wasn't aware of the change, but there was a weird sadness when he was 2 that he was no longer like an infant. He became a toddler, so to speak. So that infant went away, but he came into a toddler. So my experience with my son had shifted in that moment, but he wasn't aware of it. He had no idea. I'm like, oh, you're a different kid that went to sleep last night. And he's like rubbing his eyes like, what's for breakfast? It's like it didn't even dawn on him. But just, again, you can witness in yourself when you look at a picture from many years ago and see that. So once we start gathering information and wrapping our minds around this as best we can, death isn't the end. It's just a new beginning of something you're leaving. That's it. So death is something that's replicated throughout time and always will. But so is life. There wouldn't be birth without death. So in the field of polarity in which we're in right now, in the world of duality, those poles are there. All right? So, again, our belief structures will come into the full light once you experience death of somebody, a loved one, because we're not here to tell you that don't be sad, because at the corporeal level, mourning is a process to expand us into a whole nother level. Where we're going with that, I can't prove it, but we are expanding higher. It doesn't mean we'll just like, oh, Jimmy died yesterday. Oh, well, what are you doing for dinner tonight? It will never come to that, because mourning is a process of going into a deeper place. So it isn't to be evaded, it's to be fully into it. So I don't know the understanding of the viewer who actually brought up death, Brian, what he wants us to talk about, but we're going to probably talk about from different angles as we go on this evening. Yeah. So once you start to grasp the understanding of death, it's the opposite of birth and how we look at it. It's just an end of a chapter, but a beginning of a new chapter. All right? So let's start off with that part of death, and then let's get into disease as well, and we're going to twine the two in together, because at some level we can't separate the two.
Yeah. So Brian also asked about sickness.
Yeah.
I view sickness as an experience. Oftentimes we weigh things in our mind as if this happened because of this. And we say things. So, like, for example, people will say, like, oh, you must have bad karma if you're sick. That's not it. There's not levels to this. So it like, if you're rich, it's not you have better karma than somebody who is poor, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We classify things in our heads, and we're making sickness as if it's a negative or a bad connotation, like an experience, and that's not what sickness is. Sickness is simply a different state. It's a different set of experience. You can still find enlightenment, truth, happiness, joy, non-suffering, whatever you want to call it, in that experience. So to think that somebody gets sick because of a reason, no, that's a mind-created story. We are all, and Frank talks about this a lot, we come into this world very much so with a role that we're here to play. Yes, there's different ways for us to perceive and play with this role, but everything that we're all experiencing is very much so already in motion.
Yeah. And again, there's no way for me and Mike to prove this, but when you look at the understanding of, we spoke about this before, fractals, and when you examine the world around us, and fractals is just replications of the whole entire thing that's going on. And what I mean is, if you look at, just say, movies or something like that, you see different roles being played out. And so an actor will actually choose a particular role prior to going onto the set. So they already know to some degree what role they're going to play, so they play it out. So I believe that when we came in, we had a soul contract, and we said, okay, I want to go in, and this is going to be my theme. But we still don't know what we still don't know what happens until we get onto the set. So even on the set, that's when my abilities of perception or acting come in. So we might have came in and says, okay, I want to experience a certain disease. That's part of the role.
I just don't want to off-put people. So, like, me personally, it was hard for me at first. I felt this need where I wanted to be in control of my life. Like, I was like, I'm in control. And as I began to understand these concepts on a much deeper level, there's nothing to be in control of. That is the self. You're trying to create, or excuse me, that's an identity. Mm-hmm. You're holding on to the I, not the capital S self. Mm-hmm. And so when to think that you're in control of this journey is very much an ego self-identity created experience. In reality, what's happening is just what's happening. And I don't want to say everything's predetermined, but it is.
It's predetermined and free will at the same time. It's this and that, not this or that.
I just know that was very off-putting to me when I first heard that. I was like, no, I'm in control. I'm a creator, you know?
Yeah.
But
again, if you look at it as like you're playing a role, so like you take like Tom Hanks taking the role of Philadelphia. He was a lawyer that attracted AIDS. So can you imagine, it was like, oh, I don't want to attract AIDS. Well, I'm like, well, that's the role. What we fell in love with was how the character dealt with the sickness or the disease. And that's what we have the choice. Some of the most peaceful people I've ever met were sick. And then some of the most erratic people I've met never accrued a disease in life and died at the age of 90. So now we're coming into the understanding of what the show is all about, perspective shift. That's what we do have control over. One day, as we change our perspective, there will be a time where we can actually then choose and switch within the role. But, why would Tom Hanks change the disease from a common cold away from AIDS? It wouldn't have been as dramatic. That would have.
It's just funny because everything is unfolding exactly how it should. And it's funny because how we experience stuff is as it's happening. And so we try to grasp on and make it happen a certain way. And it's in that we experience suffering and despair, and dis-ease. It grasping at this. Why is this unfolding this way?
And that's what we're trying to get to.
It's you're fighting what is.
So death and sickness don't necessarily need to be attached to suffering. So that's really what we're trying to get at here. It doesn't mean you won't suffer.
We naturally attach that to it, and it does not mean that. I love that you brought that up.
Yeah, we naturally can, and we naturally can't. We don't have to.
But that's a great point.
Yeah, it seems like
we kind of naturally associate that.
Yeah, we associate death and
sickness must be suffering, and
with
it's
suffering.
No.
It doesn't have to be, but it can be. But suffering is a useful tool. I remember Eckhart Tolle said this, and when he said it, it was brilliant because it's so simple but brilliant. He said, suffering is a useful tool until it's needed no longer. It doesn't mean the disease goes away. It doesn't mean death stops. It means you come to an understanding what sickness is. You come to an understanding what death is. They're just periods of times or experiences within our life. Now, when we actually perceive that, what we're talking about is perspective shift here is to get people to not suffer through whatever the day may bring them. We're not trying to get people to understand, through perspective, you could be a millionaire. Through perspective, you'll never have cancer. Because if I tell you that and you don't become a millionaire and you actually accrue cancer, you're going to feel like a failure. That's not what it's about.
It's all unfolding as it should.
It is, yeah. And we don't know, again, as we get better at this, go to different levels, just like great actors get to choose the role they want. But they tend to choose roles that create a lot of suffering to overcome it. And that's what we marvel over.
Those are the greatest stories.
Yeah,
truly.
Some of the interesting shows that you see out there, which they're very well acted, and I can see how they're acted. But sometimes there is no resolve within the character. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't care for those because we came here to resolve. It's not the resolve is to overcome the outlook on how we're going through. We're going through this. I'm like, yeah, so what? Can we look at it differently? It doesn't mean that I don't see a starving kid in the street, but I see God in that starving kid now. I see life in that starving child. It doesn't mean I don't try to help them. I don't overlook it and brush it away, but I don't run and freaking out and be hysterical and be diseased by it because I will be no help to that starving child either. But when I stay calm and don't suffer for that child, I have a better chance to communicate with that child. And what is death? Death is the end of all sickness. It really is. So when they come in together, so death is a cure for all disease. But do we have to die to the corporeal self, or can I die to the concept of suffering? That's my perspective. And I do it all the time. I get symptoms all the time. I meditate every day. according to scientists and biologists and health experts, I do the right thing. I go to the gym and I eat right, and except for once in a while I'll have cookies and stuff. Just don't tell Karen. They're like, where did all the cookies go? I'm like, I have no idea.
I haven't seen them.
Yeah. I love cookies and ice cream. And I'm going to stop there, but
Frank, you're like one of the healthiest people I know.
Sick as fuck. Yeah. But so I'll go through these, I do all this stuff, but yet I'll get these symptoms that will come on. And what I've learned over time is I don't talk about it. I just sit with the symptom. And I watch it come and I watch it go. Now, in the past, I might have talked about it. I may have taken a day off from work or a couple of days off from work, I try not to spread it and go about. So I feel stuff coming on, and my perception onto it, I don't allow myself to suffer, but I feel the headache. I feel the nausea. I feel the dizziness. I feel whatever the symptom is. But when I sit with it, it seems to run through my body quicker. Now, I don't know if it's because of my perspective, it's running through my body, but I can tell you I'm not suffering anymore from it. Where the suffering years ago, I'm like, oh, great. This weekend's going to be hell. Like, wait a minute, I'm going to be sitting on the couch all weekend. I'm not going to be able to enjoy myself and this and that. Where I'm like, but it's Wednesday. You talk about the weekend. I'm like, this always happens. That to me is the mind of a suffering man, which I once was. Now it's just like, okay, I got the symptoms. So what? I may talk about it if someone's like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I just got a rush of energy through me. Mm-hmm. Is it good or bad or indifferent? I don't know. But I have the perception to say no. It's coming in. It's going to amplify my, my body to a higher level. So I tell myself a story that's preferential to the output in which I want. But I'm not lying to myself either. Like, I don't feel anything. I don't feel anything. Yeah, it's dude, what are you sweating for,
That's the monkey mind.
Yeah, it is.
It's knowing that, whoa. There's no good. There's no bad. It just is.
It just is, yeah. And when I come to that place, it just is, and I sit with it, I can feel it run through my body rather quickly. And I haven't sustained any, and again, I'm not, I don't know why, but I haven't really sustained anything long enough to where it stopped me from doing what I wanted to do, Where in the past, the drama of it, the suffering of it, disallowed me from doing the things I enjoy doing. Now, if Karen wants me to do something and I don't want to do it, I'm like, I'm not feeling good today. That story works in my favor, right? I just gave myself up. Karen's like, you son of a bitch.
Next time that rolls around, good luck, Frank.
Yeah, she's not going to let me off the hook.
Good luck.
Well, thanks to, what was the guy?
Brian.
Brian, I just gave that up. I gave that up for you, so Karen now is going to hold me to the fire. So.
Yep.
But, so yeah.
It was worth it.
It was worth it for Brian. Mm-hmm. You owe me one, Brian.
You owe me one, buddy.
But, and again.
These questions are really important, too, because, guys, these questions are what we all are thinking about.
Yes.
Because we're all running around
a lot of these concepts people use, and rightfully so, they use them in, how to make your life more enriched and how to make your life happy, and that's great. But you can't, how do I know what health is unless I know what sickness is, right? How do I know what light is unless I know what darkness is? These are contrastal things or paradoxical things that exist. They're polar opposites. How do I know what feeling really good is unless I felt really bad? But on either end of it, I don't have to suffer. So we attach feeling good as why would you suffer? Well, some people do suffer. Why? Because how long is this going to last? I feel good right now, but tomorrow I could feel like hell. So people could take something good and suffer from it. But if you can take suffering out of the equation and come to understand this is part and parcel of life, sickness, health, life, birth, and death, these are part and parcel. Just like a trough of a wave and a crest of a wave. Our life, trying to separate them is where suffering comes in. But when you allow it to run through your body, it doesn't slow us down in the experience in which we have. It becomes part of it. Because if Tom Hanks never attracted AIDS and never came to die but fall into peace, what would that movie Philadelphia have told us? That's what I'm saying. We're trying to live these spectacular lives, and every spectacular character I ever watched in a movie overcame, not by getting rid of it, by looking at it differently, come to peace with it.
I like the direction you're taking it because I want to take it that one step deeper, which is, what is sickness? Sickness is a number of ideas and concepts within the mind. We associate pain, we associate suffering, we associate bedridden, lack of food, lack of sleep. These are all concepts that are hidden behind a word.
The body's out of balance.
Of sickness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this what is sickness, when we're looking at it, it's concepts that you're associating with. So even in quote unquote a state of sickness, in this realm, having cancer, going through fighting any type of battle within the body, you don't have to play sick. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You can live a full life while quote unquote living with a sickness. And that's what Frank and I are getting at. Like if you in the mind, day in, day out, are telling yourself, I am sick, I am experiencing suffering, you will absolutely experience,
and you will find it,
a painful, suffering state of sickness. Mm-hmm. You can also flip that coin and find people right now, going through chemo, some very intense different treatments, who are in one of the most, if not the best states of their life.
Yeah. Yeah, it can happen. Now, we live in a world of highly suggestibility, and part of our organism is a suggestibility. So suggestibility, what I mean is there are people out there that probably have never been to a doctor and had a bout of cancer and it went away, but they didn't know. But once you're given a diagnosis, it's very difficult for the mind to let go of it. So when it doesn't let go of it, it has to then look at it differently. Now, it doesn't mean you can't get rid of it. We've heard stories about this, but it's learning. And the people that actually did, I heard a couple of accounts of people that had like stage 4 cancer, and their prognosis wasn't good. But the prognosis was such in their face, like you got 4 months to live. It's like, well, that's not a really hell of a lot of time. So they were up against the wall, so to speak. So they had to immediately accept they were going to die. And once they accepted it, and again, this is not all cases. It doesn't mean they succeeded and the person who died after 4 months failed. It's not what I'm getting at. But once you're given a diagnosis, it's very difficult to let go. And then once you give it a prognosis, that can shatter you up. But there's the ability to become, in order to move through it, you actually accept it. Don't try to fight it. Just sit with it and accept it, and then the suffering leaves. It doesn't necessarily mean the cancer will leave, but as science moves on, they're actually seeing that you can actually switch the cancer gene back to a healthy gene. I guess Bruce Lipton talks about this in his Biology Belief, and he continues further. Like when he written that book, even he has more research data behind him than even from the time in which he written the book. So once we get it, so now think about this. If we came here, and the reason I believe we all came here is to see how powerful we are in a finite setting. Because we're infinite beings, but we're given a finite setting. We're given a little cube to go live, just like, musicians are only given 12 notes. And here you go. That's all you get. Mm-hmm. Make an album. Mm-hmm. Make several albums. Don't stop playing to the end of the day. Writers are only given 26 letters. I think I said 24 the other day. I'm probably,
Oh, whatever.
Yeah, it's 26 letters.
I don't even know.
We're given a handful of letters.
Yeah, there you go.
And go write a great novel. So we have a finite setting that we came in to live this infinite experience with. So when you get a disease or a sickness, overcoming it shows the power in which we can do it. And how do we overcome it? One of the quickest ways and the principles we talk about is acceptance. And acceptance, when you accept it, you become at ease. I remember when I was a kid and I wake up, I had a sore throat. And I wasn't lying about it to get out of school because I've done that often. And my mom came to soon realize that I was really sick. The second she let me off the hook of having to go to school, all of a sudden the sickness dissipated tremendously. It really did. So was it, what brought that about when we were kids? Was it because we had to go do something that we didn't want to do? Perhaps. I don't know. Maybe it was the amplification of the antibodies in my system to get higher level. They're proven that as well. So not all sickness is bad, or actually you can look at all sickness as just it just is. But through perception and the way we look at it and detachment from it, we can overcome it and use it as a soundboard or a trampoline or bouncing off of it into a higher level.
Yep.
So it isn't a problem, but if you believe it's a problem, you're going to experience problematic aspects of it. So that's why people are looking for, is it this or that? It's this and that. It's all about perception. If I look at disease as I ought not to have it, you will suffer.
Well, so death. Speaking of death, you want to talk about your brother a little bit? Was that a monumental moment for you as far as waking up goes?
Yeah, definitely.
Because that was an early age. How old were you?
I was 20.
20 years old.
I was 20 years old. Yeah.
How old was your brother when you?
He was 18.
18, so 2 years younger.
Yeah, he was 2 years younger, and I remember. It's one of those things that you never forget.
I mean, that was probably your first or most monumental experience with death, right? In your life,
because me and my brother were real close. We shared a room together. We were at the age where our friends were the same.
Yep.
And so you go to bed one night and you wake up, and in my case, I'll tell you a little bit about the story. I don't share it that much, but a close friend of mine, good friend of mine, me and him were supposed to go to the Hamptons, and it was the 4th of July weekend, so it was actually the first. So it was like the June 30th. I remember this.
Oh, for like 4th of July weekend or something?
Yeah. So, the 4th of July obviously ended up during the week. Because I remember it was a Saturday. It was the first. And so I think it was a Saturday or Friday. I can't remember. I remember it was the 30th. My buddy came to my house and said, hey, we're going to Hamptons. So I'm like, I can't. I got to work. Now, I was 20 years old. I started young being real responsible,
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, come on. He's like, hounding me. I'm like, dude, I can't. All right. I'll meet you out there, So, it was a Thursday, and I remember that Friday. So, unknown to me, he went on and asked my brother to go. I didn't know. So I remember just, going to bed at night, getting up really early in the morning, and heading out. I lived down Long Island at the time, heading into the city. And when I got to the city, I went to the office I worked in, and I had to go meet somebody on like 5th Avenue. And I remember as I was leaving, my manager, he beat me, and I get to payphone. He's like, hey, call your house. And I'm like, all right. He's like, why? He's like, something, your aunt called or whatever. And I'm like, that's weird. So I called the house, and my aunt answered the phone. And right then and there, I knew something happened. So I hung up the phone and just drove straight home. And at the time, I didn't know. But of all the people in my life, I thought it was either my dad or my brother. And it turned out it was my brother. And it's like you flipped upside down many times, And so the first thing that hit me was anger.
Were you at all, sorry to interject, in an experience with meditation, enlightenment, awakening? Was any of these concepts ever introduced to you?
Not at all.
Okay,
no.
so you weren't looking for anything.
Yeah, I put my hand to a wall that day.
You were living fully in the Matrix.
yeah, I was.
Yep.
With the weirdest
I'm just trying to paint a picture.
The weirdest thing, though, I had these weird experiences, though. I was driving a van, like a full-on van. And I remember getting onto the Sunset Parkway. I finally made it out of the city, and I made it to Sunset Parkway. I was doing 75 miles an hour. Now, if you know what it's like to drive in New York.
I was just going to say.
I first started on the LIE.
People say
weaving in and out of traffic. I was up on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
I was not stopping and waiting. I was just going. A police officer, no one pulled me over. I literally made it back to my house from Manhattan, probably 25 minutes. Like, it's record. And I don't recall most of the drive. I don't recall it. I went to an alternate place. And I remember pulling up, and the first one that came out was my sister to tell me. And it's like I knew. So these weird things happened that I recall later on that never happened before. It was almost like the van was picked up and moved onto Long Island. Now, if anyone knows, I was literally on Fifth Avenue, and I wasn't too far from the Garden. So, and I made it back to my house in like 25 minutes. That's
how long would it normally take?
Oh, freaking
Hour and a half?
It would take a long time, yeah.
Okay.
Because you got traffic and stuff.
Yep.
But I literally hauled it, and I
broke
don't,
every law in the book.
Oh yeah, but I don't recall half the trip. I just remember ending up in front of my house. So in that moment, everything that was taught to me, like mainly when you call spirituality and Catholicism, all these doctrines, everything just came crumbling down. It came crumbling down, and so you first you start out you're angry, then you deny it that it happened. I remember like waking up for days and forgetting he died, and then you live through it every day, So I remember going through that, and that's kind of like, that's what jarred me. So it wasn't instantly that I became spiritual. Mm-hmm. For me, it was a very gradual thing. That woke me up and shook me. It shook my belief structures, what that did. And then it left, it almost like you put a jigsaw puzzle together, and then someone came about and rattled it. The problem is someone threw the box away, so I forgot what the puzzle was supposed to look like. Mm-hmm. That's really what happened. So the box was thrown in the garbage, someone smashed it up, and now I had to put these pieces back together, but I don't even know it. I have nothing to go off of anymore. I have nothing to go off of. But then I remember, I don't tell the story to many people because I remember all of a sudden all these people coming to my house. Like, I had a huge family. Mm-hmm. So if there was 100 people, there was, 1,000 at my house, and it was just getting too noisy for me. Now my buddy, who was in the car as well, he didn't die yet. He eventually died, but he was in a hospital out in the Hamptons, closer to the Hamptons. So I got in my car. I didn't tell anybody. I just drove out to the hospital. I didn't know what I was going to do when I got there. Mm-hmm. And I walk into the hospital, and I see his parents, and I see a couple of friends I knew that were there. And they all looked at me because he was the one driving the car, and he was driving erratic. So he was somewhat to blame. But
yeah, just to clarify that, your brother was in a car accident.
Yeah, he was in a car accident.
With him.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I went out there, I remember, and this is the first time I realized there's something else out there than just here in the corporeal world. Like, this was real on June 30th. This became, I don't know what the hell it was, on the 1st of July. And so I find myself, I walk in, and the parents, and I knew them for a long time, and I'm sitting there, and they look at me, and they're sorry, and I'm just like a zombie by now. I just literally drove almost an hour out to close to the Hamptons from where I grew up. It was quite a distance, but again, I don't remember doing that either. And I get there, and I walk into the room where he's sitting there with every, machine hooked up to him.
All the tubes.
Yeah,
and
he's
everything.
He's on life support, and so they say, hey, we're going to give you a moment. And right when they left, I got angry. I literally had my hand on the plug. I was getting ready to pull the plug. And then a voice came to me and said, don't do that. And it was my brother. And I had to look around. It was weird. Like, it wasn't just an echo. It was like, hey, don't do that. And right then and there, I just walked out of the hospital. And at that moment, I forgave him. I ultimately forgave him. I was not a forgiving person. If someone did something to me,
I was going to hold on to that grudge.
Yeah. I was ready to pull that plug.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it was, but yet this voice, I heard this voice, and it was my brother's voice. Didn't see anything. It wasn't like I saw his being sitting there. It was a voice like he was this close to me. He says, don't do that. And it wasn't like, don't do that. It was like, don't do that. Like, don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Very clear, very distinct.
Oh, yeah. Correct. Yeah, and it was kind of like Kurt, like, don't do that. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, and I left. And I just remember walking out of the hospital, and saying sorry because we knew he was going to die, and I think they pulled the plug later the next day or whatever. And I remember just driving home, and it was odd, but I was at peace for a moment. And then when I went back to my house and all these people there, it's like I fell back into it. So I was wavering in and out of peace and despair of the moment. But I remember in that moment, there was this overwhelming peace I don't think I've ever felt since I was like a young child, because I knew I experienced it before because I recognized it. But I don't recall when I recognized it, so it must have been as a young child or maybe a past life. Who knows?
Witness.
Yeah, it was weird. So to me, that was the closest experience I had to death with somebody that was very close to me. My brother was only 2 years younger than me. And I went through the period of mourning and stuff like that. And but yeah, as time went on, and that's why anyone that's listening, that's going through this, it's your own journey. Me and Mike are just here to express our perspective. We're not telling you what to perceive. You just have the ability to perceive it. And that's what it is. So no teachers came into my life and said, okay, this is what you have to do to get over it. Things occurred. This book came into my life. I heard somebody say this, not to me, but off in the distance. And I started putting two and two together, and all of a sudden, the pieces in the jigsaw puzzle started fitting together. And then one day I saw the picture. I was like, holy cow. That's how it happened. It wasn't like, boom.
And we can give any story we'd like to it,
Yeah, my day shattered like that.
But
yeah,
that
yeah,
is your brother introducing you to the concept. We can attach different perspectives to every type of story.
Yeah, exactly. So if my brother hadn't passed, would I be here? No, I'd be somewhere different. Would I be spiritual?
Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would have been a bum in the street, bashing people's heads in with a baseball bat because my brother
I just
didn't
feel like
die.
people have very traumatic experiences or any type of experience, and we attach our story to them.
It's a belief structure that we're holding on to that we have no evidence to, and on that day it was completely shattered, and I had to put it back together because we need a belief structure to get through this world. But the belief structure that was handed to me was completely shattered like that jigsaw puzzle. So I had to figure out how to put the pieces together. And what I'm telling you is it's possible, and it was looking back, it was one of the greatest gifts that were given to me because I was able to do that. At the time, if someone said,
wouldn't wish it upon the world, yeah.
No, I would, if someone came up to me and said, this is a gift that happened, I would have probably hit him with a right hand.
Yeah, get out of here.
I got your freaking gift.
Oh, yeah, for real.
But yeah, as time went on, I came to realize that it was a gift. One out of my hands, one out of my control. I had no control of it.
Thanks for sharing that, because I'm sure a lot of
thanks
people...
for asking about it.
A lot of people, are experiencing and going through, different scenarios of death.
Yeah.
Whether it's a mother, a father, a
or
relative.
A job. Like losing a job could be...
a death.
Yeah, it really can.
Losing a pet, a death.
Yeah.
All of these are different experiences.
I stop at the goldfish, though.
I like it.
Yeah, the goldfish is like,
get over it.
Get over the goldfish.
It's just... It's great to hear, a story like that and see you where you're at in your life.
Yeah.
And to be at peace and a true knowing of this world, this what I'm calling reality, is unfolding exactly how it should be at the exact right time. And you touched on this in the beginning, but we don't come into this world. I've heard this before. We don't come into this world a minute too early, and we don't leave a minute too late.
Now, look at where I talked about, and I like to use movies. I'm a storyteller, and movies because people tend to, will gravitate towards that because they tell brilliant stories. But think about the character Ned Stark in Game of Thrones. Okay. The man, he died within the first 3 episodes of the first season. I think it was
episode 2.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the Game of Thrones, by the way.
The story was all evolved around him in a sense because it was his children that led forth into what was about to happen. So in that case, for me, in the story form, my brother would have been the Ned Stark, and I would have been, the child or the thing that remained here to learn how to deal with it. Mm-hmm. So, but think about that. When that happened, that was like, whoa, how did the main character, he shouldn't have died, die? Like, my brother at 18 shouldn't have died based on what we're told. You're only supposed to die when you're 95.
Yep.
But it made everything change, and the children of Ned Stark had to change their outlook on what the future is about to bring. And when you look at what happened, it was a gift to them, in a sense. So when you start to look at life that way, again, I don't wish this upon anybody. This is not something, it's something that you cannot guard yourself upon something like this or create a belief around it until it happens. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It
just is. It's an experience.
You don't prepare yourself for that. Like,
and nor should you.
Well, you can't. You really can't. It's something that happens. Now,
to run around and prepare for other people's deaths would be quite.
Yeah. Now, if I knew these principles, and concepts, I would have still mourned. But maybe putting that jigsaw puzzle together would have been quicker. But that wasn't my gig. That wasn't the time. This all is one big story, and the greatest movies I've ever seen started out where everything's copacetic, all hell broke loose, and then somehow the resolve came in, and things came together, and it seemed to, I don't want to use the word work out, but it came together into an understanding where it was acceptable.
At peace.
Yeah, your acceptance. Yeah. And this is what it is. And that's our journey. However you live it, that is your story. That is the hero's story. And that's what we all came here. It's the hero's journey. We all come out, we're little children. Everything's going good up to that moment where something doesn't go good, and then how do we get over it? Why me? Then someone says, why not you? And when you say that, okay, why not me? Now I'm taking responsibility for my perception, not for what happened to me, but for my perception onto what happened. And it didn't happen to me, it happened.
There is no me.
Yeah, it can be. It felt that way, but so death has multitudes of layers to it, and death is something that we as individuals have to come to grips with. But we all know we're going to die. We all know every one of our family members is going to die. Now, a parent always wishes they go before the child, but the child doesn't wish that either, right? I see people that parents died at 95, mourn just like I did for my 18-year-old brother. Mm-hmm. And that's perfectly, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, but we expect, but yet when someone dies, it's their frequency, vibration, their connectiveness is here, and now it's no longer here in the physical plane. But what I do find out is my brother never left.
Absolutely. And guys, from a purely scientific point of view, energy cannot be created or destroyed. We have proven this. This is scientific fact.
You don't have to be transformed.
Yeah, we are energy.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way for us to be created or destroyed. This is why, past lives, it will...
Yeah, and there's no way for us to prove past lives. There are people that experience it. Like, I don't know about you, Mike, but I don't have any true memories of past lives, but I know people that do.
Well, yeah, it's funny you say that. I've seen some really cool people talk about their past lives.
Yeah. And, some people, amazed at it, but Karen, one of her colleagues' children, her daughter, remembers being drowned.
See,
and
that's
from
so
a past life.
True.
Yep. Yeah, but it was someone haunting to her when she was younger. I think she's probably 14, 15 years old now. But Karen she sat and talked with the girl at 12 years old, and she's vividly telling the story. It's not like someone put this in her head. The parents didn't know what to do about it. So there are people out there that are tightly connected. I feel I'm tightly connected to principles of understanding it. As things come on, I use them. I can explain how they operate, but where they come from, I don't know. Do I have guides out there? I'm sure I do. I don't know what they look like. I see my brother a lot, but that could just be a vivid in my, imagination.
Conditioned projection?
Condition, yeah. It could be that. But I do have energies running through me that tell me what to say, which way to go. So I'm just narrating, or it's being narrated to me. I'm just following the lead.
See, where we get caught up is we try to control the experience rather than allow it to flow. And that's where we go, this shouldn't be happening this way. I want it to be this way.
Yeah.
And that's where we get caught up, and we're
and
there's no other way for it to be.
Yeah, and controlling your life or situation eventually will come to you letting go. So controlling, like suffering, is a useful tool until it's needed no longer. And the backside of that is when you finally stop trying to grab the bull by its horns and just admire the bull in the arena, you're like, wow, this is peaceful. But why would you grab the bull by the horns? Why would you try to steer the bull down to the ground? To say you can control the bull? You can just sit and watch the bull do the bull's thing. Why do you need to control it? All of man's atrocities came from the control aspect. Another man tried to control another man, so they created slavery. How did that work? It didn't even work out for the slave master, because the slave master had to overlook all the slaves. You couldn't leave and go on vacation.
Created multiple jobs.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
Right?
It created a problem
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah, it
themselves.
wasn't.
That's what happens when you're trying to
Do it.
Yeah.
But you see, those goes against the natural principles that govern this world we're living in. So by trying to control stuff, these principles will beat you up. They will. But if you go along and understand the principles, things start to flow. Things start to move. But sometimes you have to try to control the world to realize you can't.
I do think that's a big part of the human experience.
It is
getting lost in the created self.
Yeah.
And figuring and finding your way out of it.
I believe, because I believe
seeing that this is all mind created.
I believe we came here. Alan Watts said this one time. It's like we're playing a game of hide and seek. We know something, but we forgot what it is we know, and we're here to discover it. So the word remember, when you break it down, it's re-entering into a membership called the human race. So as humans, as pure humans, we understand these concepts, but when we fall out of the human-like and disruptive, we become more barbaric. When I look at, I'm just going to use that term. But when we came here to remember back into human race, and we have to go through wars, through death, through suffering, and when I mean death, through the aspect of suffering death, in order to become back into member of who we are. And then it's like, oh my God, this is probably why we came here, to suffer through it. But then we could see this suffering, like masses that walk the earth and talk about this. They can see it, and they're here to help ease it. But they still get sick. They still have things happen to them, but they don't suffer through it. Because if they didn't, we would think they were a god. The reason Jesus died on the cross, because we didn't want him to appear as a god, but a human, but one who didn't suffer. He took the suffering with him. He got rid of suffering. That's what the whole New Testament's about. He already suffered for us. Well, the suffering was done. We don't need to suffer. It doesn't mean you won't choose to suffer, but you don't need to suffer. And we came here to discover, being sick, having a broken leg, and watching somebody die. It doesn't mean you have to suffer, but it doesn't mean you're not sad when someone dies. It doesn't mean you don't take cough medicine when you're sick, but you don't have to suffer through it. So you may have the symptoms, you may have the experiences, but suffering can be alleviated from sickness and both death. And that's what we came here to discover, is alleviating suffering.
Our true self.
Yeah. And when you actually understand, when you actually view that from your true self, you see the disease or the sickness and the death as a role being played. That's it.
All one and the same.
Yeah.
There's no good. There's no bad. You're experiencing.
Yeah. We create the good and the bad through experience.
By assigning the meaning to it.
If somebody looks at sickness as it ought not to happen, they're 100% right, and they'll experience that. Death should not happen. They're 100% right, and they'll experience that. But because it happens, it comes and it goes, as we learn these principles and you work these principles, you see how they work in your favor. So when you let go, and these principles allow you not to suffer, but it doesn't mean you don't get sick. It doesn't mean people in your family will not die. You know, we have no control over that.
Recognize the voice within your head.
Yeah.
Keep that mental commentary in check.
Yeah.
Because that's really what Frank and I are getting about. That's what you're internally, quote unquote, battling.
Now, if you want to go even deeper now, so science is getting close to a point where the disease, the mind that's not at ease, will create the sickness. Will actually create it. And then also, too, there's also some bit of evidence that when they look at the DNA structure and they look it up and down, there are certain attributes that will create immortal attributes where the corporeal body doesn't have to die. The thing is, we haven't experienced that. So it might be a frequency that it hasn't hit to generate that part of the DNA that continues on. So therefore, when one dies, it would be more of ascension, where you just simply, I'm out of here, and you exit the stage left rather than get kicked off the stage, so to speak. And there are scientists now and biologists now looking into this type of thing. Now, I'm not here, so I'm not a biologist or a scientist, so I can't say for definite that is, but I feel that in my heart. But just because I may exit this world through a disease doesn't mean I failed. It doesn't.
Not at all.
Not at all. And even if I suffer up to the moment in which I die, doesn't mean I failed. It was just an experience. But the principles that we're talking about, that we've been talking about, and utilizing perception, one of the principles that we talk about here is how I see something is the experience I'll have within the field of what's happening.
Absolutely, every time.
Yeah, so that's something we have control over, is our perception. And we do. So, again, if these are new concepts coming from you, you know, my life sucks, my life isn't that bad, is more appropriate than my life is amazing. Going from my life sucks to my life is amazing is a form of like lying to yourself. But going from my life sucks to it's not that bad is appropriate a way of approaching it in the direction in which you want to go.
And a huge step.
It's a huge step. It's huge. Because all you need to do is about face in the direction in which you want to go, and then the universe takes over in the field of another principle, and it goes along with the fourth law that we talked about. Change is the only constant. Well, change also attributes or goes into expansion.
It's crazy. As soon as you make that little mental switch,
it's all done. It's done.
New opportunities present themselves.
Yeah, and they keep presenting themselves. So when I look in the direction in which I want to go, argument's sake, I want to go west. West, it just continues to expand. Matter of fact, once I turn west and face west, that's the journey. Then I'm just going to have more of it. So once I deem $5 as abundance, I'm just going to get more of that $5. That 5 turns into 10, then to 10,000, then to 10 million, so to speak. But the same goes in the opposite direction. If I face a direction in which I don't prefer, that will expand as well. And that's the idea of suffering. And the physics will allow you to do that. But the beautiful thing about suffering, there's a floor. I did. There's a bottom to it.
There you go.
Where the expansion in the preferential, there is no ceiling. You could just flow through the ethers. That's the brilliance. So even within this finite setting and the balancing point, the universe is still positive. Because even if you have a choice to choose negative, choice onto itself is a positive attribute. So choice or positive is always outweighed in this universe than negative. It already is. Because if you have a choice to do something that you don't want to do, that's a positive thing.
You are never trapped. You are never without.
You can feel trapped.
An opportunity.
You can experience the
Absolutely.
feeling of trapped.
I could be dropped in any type of situation now and understand that I carry these principles with me forever.
Yeah.
And always. And
well, the funny you said dropped into a situation. So there's this, like, before COVID, people starting to do it now. These escape rooms started coming up. Mm-hmm. And what is it?
I've been to one of those.
What is the escape room? It is nothing but a fractal of our actual life. What do you mean? You have to figure out how to get out of the room. And what's best suited to get out of the room. Now, I've never done it, but I understand the concept. If everyone in the room works together, the door opens. That's the major principle.
And quickly.
Yeah. If you start fighting against each other, so the principle that we talk about of collaboration expands in the direction that's preferential and what we call quicker, more enjoyable. If you compete and fight and argue, it slows it down and it starts to break down, fragment. So these escape rooms are nothing but a mere fractal of our actual life. So we use these games to then use in life because we forget that life is a game. So disease or sickness and death is part of the game. It's what keeps us focused. It really does. Because, hey,
just another level.
Yeah, it's not till I feel sick that I'm actually seeking health.
And there's no level that's better or worse than another level.
Yeah. There isn't. They're just fractals, replications. And this is how we come to understand, if you need proof, if you start looking at everything that fragments and fractals, why wouldn't we continue on? Just like an actor dies in a movie but doesn't end their career, they get another role. Everything is just a mere fractal of where we are. So we don't need to have hard evidence, or what more hard evidence does one need, is really what I say. We are eternal. A part of us is. And there's a part of us that is going to fade away and die. That's natural.
But the witness is always eternal.
Yeah. You know? You think about your hair grows, it falls out. Your nails grow, you cut them off. It keeps coming. These, what we call physical attributes or corporeal attributes, are always fleeting. They never remain the same. But the witness that knows, damn, the nails are long, I cut them off, and the hair's falling out, or whatever it is, that will never die. That will exist forever. You know? And that's how you know, like the conversation you had. You know, when it gets too loud, all of a sudden that voice that knows everything says, shut up.
The more you can stay as the witness and stay with the witness, you know, the silence, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
That's
it's like
where
the
you're going to start to
director,
experience.
It's like the actor being also as a director on the set. And it's been done. So you have a director that directs themselves and the others, so to speak. So you can become both the director and the actor in this moment. Think about this. Probably no time in history are there more actors that are directors, but they're actually in the movie. And they're the director than any other time in history. Why? Because the fractal is more people are starting to get these concepts. Now, whether you intellectualize the concepts such as a philosopher would, or a scientist would, or me and Mike, it doesn't matter. You're getting them. Doesn't matter how you discuss or talk about it. One isn't better than the other. They're just different forms of language. So whether I'm talking about pizza in French or Italian or English, we're still talking about pizza. But the French are going to speak about it differently in the language. Italians will speak about it differently, and in English we're going to speak about it differently. But we're talking about pizza. It's good. That's it. And as we start to look at it that way, that's what we come here to understand. Everyone has a different way of expressing this life of overcoming suffering. And there is no right or wrong way. There isn't
That's
the
mine.
answer. Yeah. You may have a belief and your belief is right. And your belief will expand and open up. But just by this guy Brian answering the question, he's already there.
Yep.
Because, if he wasn't, it would be very difficult to answer that question.
Thanks for writing us into us, Brian. We
Yeah,
appreciate
thank you.
that. If anybody else wants to write in, you can access our email. We're perspectiveshift2020@gmail.com. You can leave a comment below. We'll respond to either method.
And if you will, subscribe.
Yeah,
Keep
subscribe
this channel
to us
going.
below.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll see
Peace
you guys
out.
next week.
Perspective Shift now is out.
Good evening, my
Good
friend.
evening. Yeah.